citizen, same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voices.
Welcome everybody to the People Powered Planet podcast. I'm Arthur Kanigis, and I'm the producer of the film The World Is My Country, about world citizen number one Gary Davis. And for those of you who've seen the film, he advocates that we the people actually are the superpower who can save our world from its drift toward ultimate destruction by generating a people-powered planet. So each week we're having interesting guests who can talk us about aspects of how we begin to build that workable world that works for all of us. And so today we have some very special guests. I first met them when I was at the Producers Guild of America, and I met a fellow film producer. I was working on producing this Gary Davis film, and they had an incredible film, In Search of the Future, a very inspiring film. And since we were both future visionaries, and how do we create a better world, we connected. And so let me just introduce them a little bit. Now, Connie comes from a New England family with mayors and governors and philanthropists and other people who've been visionaries. And she actually earned her economics degree at the University of California, but then she was drawn more powerfully into Native American culture and wisdom. And then their paths crossed because Andrew, he was teaching chemistry and mathematics at a South African college while studying. And then when we studied comparative religions, he found, the religions, a lot of it was just hollow, made up stuff. And then suddenly he had a realization when he began to study the Aborigines. Let me tell you, as a physicist, what would a physicist gain from this Aborigine culture? Let's start with that as a question to get you going, Andrew.
All right, so just define the question, Arthur, a little, just try to focus on that. It's what do the Australian Aborigines have to do with quantum physics? Is that the question?
Yeah. You said that you found, okay, tell us what you said about the Aborigines and quantum physics in your book.
All right, so I'm the science guy of this team here. Connie has these amazing psycho-spiritual concepts that are really remarkable.
And let me say, our book is called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. So that's the important thing to understand what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Exactly. So, well worth reading. I should have mentioned that in my intro because that is what I've been reading and what's bringing us here together today, the trust frequency.
Thank you. So being the science guy and being a college teacher of chemistry and mathematics, mostly some physics, I've about 7 years of academic study behind me. And what I did once I started teaching the sciences is I realized I had a real interest in human beings and humanity. So the course that jumped out of me was a degree in social anthropology, which is the study of living cultures. And I found I was more and more interested in living indigenous cultures. So the focus I slowly gravitated toward was in fact comparative religion, but not with regard to Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, not those at all. They actually did not engage my interest. I grew up I was an Anglican and those kinds of things that were not terribly engaging to me. What was engaging was the question, what do the world's oldest people believe? How do the world's oldest people, such as the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Aborigines of Australia, the Native Americans, the folks down there in the Amazon jungle, etc., how did they perceive the universe? How did they perceive reality? And what's really kind of, it was a boggle for me. I remember the moment because I had a degree in physics, right? I only went as far as bachelor's in physics, but I was supposed to know something about quantum science. And honestly, while I could get through exams, I didn't know a darn thing about the subject from the deep inner heart of quantum science. I believe I never did have a great teacher. I had a great chemistry professor, and that changed everything for me, having that inspiration of a human being, but that didn't happen in physics. So fact is, here I am, a college teacher, and I really don't know much about a certain subject that I'm supposed to have. All right, you ask me what's quantum science, I'm supposed to be able to tell you. So here I am in this big fat book called A Reader in Comparative Religion, literally a book about this big. And it's A Reader in Comparative Religion. And I am reading an anthropologist's report on the cosmology or the worldview of the Australian Aborigines. And quite honestly, for a Westerner, it's probably the most mysterious reality that we ever encountered. And for a science-oriented person to go over to Australia and sit down with the Aborigines and listen to them telling you about the dream time and the whole creation of the universe, and the fact that it is right now, there's no past, there's no future, there's only this moment, and it's all a dream, and it's all gushing into existence as we speak. And somewhere in there, something hit me. I went, wait a minute, that's what the quantum physicists are talking about. For example, the quantum physics concept of entanglement, of quantum entanglement, the fact that all things in the entire universe, or universe as plural, are interconnected in real time right now, permanently. You change one electron here on this planet, and it has a matching electron possibly a billion light years away, and that change occurs in real time. It's not limited by the speed of light. It happens at the speed of thought. It's a whole different thing. So there's an answer to your question, Arthur.
And my life led to the exact same thing, because my involvement with, I was looking for the missing pieces of the paradigm. Okay, I knew that our paradigm was missing something because we couldn't explain paranormal things. So I didn't want to build my life on a erroneous paradigm, which is what we've done. And that's our systems that are now collapsing. They're built on misinformation about the nature of the universe, the old scientific paradigm of disconnectedness. And so what happened to me was visionary Native American elders came into my life, and through them, I saw an expanded reality, what they're connected to, just like the Aborigines and the Bushmen of the Kalahari and all indigenous peoples are connected to what we call a conscious, loving universe. But what happened to me is, after a decade of being with these people, someone said, have you read The Holographic Universe? 3 people asked me that, and the third person put the book in my hand, and I actually read it. And what I discovered was that quantum science was explaining the reality that these visionary elders, these shamanic elders who had come into my life to show me these pieces, were talking quantum science, that quantum science can explain what they know. And what I know is that what they're carrying for humanity are keys to our future, because as we connect to the all that is and the sacredness and oneness of all life, we will go to that place that Gary dreamed of, that you dream of, that you've spent your life bringing forth to people, the possibility that we are one planet, we are one people, and that it is the power of the human heart and the power of the people that are going to take us to peace on earth and heaven on earth.
Wow, that is so powerful what you're saying, and that's so interesting, that connection between science, quantum physics, which actually plays out in computers and inventions and things that are happening. I mean, it's something real that scientists have identified, and something that many people have thought of, oh, well, this is just woo-woo, this is spirituality, but actually the two are intersecting in incredibly powerful ways. And maybe that gives us some exciting concepts for dealing with what we've been dealing with in this show. Now, the last 2 episodes, because this has been the anniversary of the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima, where one bomb just destroyed an entire city, incredible. agony from one weapon, it took me right back to an incredible fear I had back when I was a kid in Washington, D.C., and the Cuban Missile Crisis came along, and we were supposed to hide under our desk, and I refused. I said, D.C. is going to be flat. There's not going to be any school and no desk. And when I was working on the film the day after, and I was doing the nuclear war research and having nuclear war nightmares, and I found myself drowning in this incredible ocean of darkness. The deeper I looked, the more I drowned, until I thought back to that song that we had sung when we were kids. And it says, there's an ocean of darkness, and I drowned in the night, till I came through the darkness to the ocean of light. And the light is forever, and the light makes us free. I will dwell in the glory of the light, said he. What can we do to get from that ocean of darkness to an ocean of light?
Well, yes, and that light can lead us forth, as that poem says, that light, as we see that light. And what we understand is that the planet was in a lower frequency where we created these systems based on separation, scarcity, and fear. Okay, so we were responding to a lower frequency when we created all these systems, and we got afraid of the other, and we built a whole military industrial complex around that, and a whole economic system based on competition and power and control over others and hoarding and all that stuff. That is what led to these systems that we see that are breaking down now. Thank God, thank the light, thank it all that it's breaking down, because it was not aligned with universal law, or what the indigenous peoples call our original instructions. So we are blessed that everything is breaking down. It looks like chaos and horrible things because of the systems that we tried to put our trust in and our faith in, and said, okay, this is as good as it gets, I'll show up for it. Well, guess what? We had to deny our own heart, our own spirit to do that. And that doesn't work, because we came on this planet to bring the love that's in the human heart forward for all of creation. And that's getting proved now with HeartMath. And I'll let Andrew speak, but we'll go into what's going on scientifically with this heart pulse, what the heart is all about, the human heart, what's in the human heart.
I'd be very interested in hearing Andrew on that, because it does resonate with something I experienced back in that little story I told about drowning in that ocean, that I realized when we actually start to shift. In your book, you mentioned that painting where you look at it and the woman's an old woman, and no matter how you look at it, she's old until you shift your thinking and she's this young girl, and then you can't even find the old woman anymore. Well, in this ocean of light, when you look around you, in almost everywhere in the world, people are helping each other. Things are growing. People are visualizing things and then bringing them into reality. There are people helping and loving each other, that touching in the heart. Even all the people that whether we call them, whether they're terrorists, whether they're somebody who straps a suicide bomb on them, love people so much, there's people that he was willing to die for them. All over we see love as the motivation, and people. Even whoever we most disagree with, they want a better life for their family. They want to help their kids. They're reaching out, and we see flowers springing everywhere. And when we shifted that ocean of light, it's total. So, what is the science between that? Andrew, tell us a little more about that.
All right. So I'm going to begin with a metaphor from biology that actually we're all very familiar with. And it's about metamorphosis, transformation. Think of the caterpillar who is going to become a butterfly. But all the caterpillar has ever known is to emerge from an egg on the branch of a tree and to start eating the leaves of that tree, and to eat and eat and eat until something began to change. And you could say that humanity is now at a point like that. We have eaten and eaten and eaten, and things are beginning to collapse. Can you put yourself inside the mind of a caterpillar as its entire reality begins to dissolve, as it wraps itself into its cocoon? as it becomes a sort of gooey mush. It probably the caterpillar is not really thinking in the way we think, but if that were to happen to us, it would look like a total disaster, the end of the world as we know it. And guess what? Something is coming that the caterpillar has no idea about. What is coming is one of the most beautiful manifestations of nature that I'm aware of, and that is the butterfly. What an extraordinary manifestation of life and beauty and spirit. These butterflies that inspire every child, including this 70-year-old child right here talking to you. Every time I see a butterfly, I'm just, wow. So if you now take that metaphor and apply it to us as humans, I propose that we have little to no idea of what's coming, of what we are capable of evolving into, because we are a species engaged in an evolutionary process. And I want to there's a two-word phrase, conscious evolution, that Barbara Marx Hubbard made famous, the futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard. So that appears to imply that we can get involved in our own evolution. I, Andrew, can realize that I'm evolving and realize that I can influence that evolution. If humanity is to wake up, because it's all about an awakening, we have potential that we have yet to realize. This species, Homo sapiens so-called, is very much an incomplete work in progress. So what if we're at the stage of the dissolving caterpillar and the butterfly is in the distant but very near future that we can't even imagine, because these cells that are programmed in the caterpillar are called imaginal cells. That's interesting, imaginal cells that are in the DNA of the caterpillar. What if there are imaginal cells in we, the people? What if we are evolving consciously into something? And what if that's a choice? What if we can say, nah, I don't want to do that. I'm quite happy going to work and driving my beat up old car, or maybe I'm rich and whatever it is. We as human beings appear to be presented with a choice at every step of the way. Does that make any sense?
So what is our basic choice?
Well, we have a choice. Now that leading edge science is proving to us that we are non-locally connected with each other and all of creation, meaning we are one. And there's been a scientific discovery in 2018 that's shifted the whole shooting match of leading edge science. So what we need to do is have a look at that science and take it in as knowing, and choose to align with that knowing. And that's what we give in our book, is we give tools for people to be able to walk in trust of a conscious loving universe, what we call a conscious loving universe. Jude Currivan, who's one of the leading edge physicists, now calls science the science of love, because it's a science of connectivity. Fear disconnected us. Love connects us. And now the science, she calls it a science of love. Okay, and this is Jude Currivan, the top physicist. And she has the whole world view. And Nassim Haramein with resonance science, they're making breakthrough scientific discoveries that we need to grok and take in and lead our lives from that place. But first we need to be able to trust it. So what we bring is these tools to understand, and then you asked for practical applications.
Right, that's where we need to actually make a shift in our life and in the world.
Okay, I'll just give one practical application, and that is to understand what creates our reality. Okay, what creates our reality personally and collectively, and that's where we put our attention. It's physics. this quantum physics has proven that the observer effect, that we create reality by observing something, we put our attention on it and it comes into reality. Well, we have the 7 aspects of consciousness that create our vibratory level. It's actually physics, okay? What creates our vibratory level, and therefore our frequency that we experience, our reality that we experience. And so we have 7 aspects of our consciousness that begin with the letter A. And I can give them in one sentence. So this is a little tiny toolkit for our listeners to be able to take and say, okay, what am I doing with my 7 aspects of my consciousness that science is proving affect my reality and the reality of the whole entire collective universe, okay? So here it goes. With expanded awareness and accurate assumptions, we choose our attitude, consciously direct our attention, align with our deepest and highest inner promptings, take committed action, and allow the loving universe to manifest beyond our wildest dreams.
Wow, now people, that was a lot to take in. Remember, get the book, The Trust Frequency. It's available on Kindle. It's free on Kindle, I found. Oh, it's the key if you're a subscriber to Kindle. So that'd be very worthwhile. And so meanwhile, when you first say, okay, what we put, the scientists are discovering what we put our attention on creates reality. First people say, oh, wow, that's really woo-woo. But actually, if you think about it, that's the only thing, everything we see around us, every building, every invention, every poster, everything started with somebody envisioning it, visualizing it, and then putting their attention on it. And out of that attention, things began to fall into place and it began to get created. And if we look at it, that's the same with all the horrid things. I mean, the nuclear bomb, somebody put their attention. How are we going to destroy these people before they destroy us? And then what they put their attention on came into reality. So really, that's the only thing that creates reality. So how do we then apply each of these these 7 steps you're talking about to creating a new reality?
Let's just put this in a context, because this is actually key. Those 7 words beginning with A, if we actually understand what they mean and how they apply, because there are 7 facets of our consciousness. And this entire conversation is about the subject of consciousness. Cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness, and individual consciousness. The only thing I, as a human being, ever experience is my consciousness. And consciousness has been a non-subject for science to study. Show me, you have to go to the Institute of Noetic Sciences or a few remarkable organizations, but on the whole, it's been ignored. Philosophy and psychology have really not addressed the nature of consciousness, what it is, how it functions. It's thought to be an epiphenomenon, and we get this complex brain, and then the brain is able to manifest this consciousness. It's the other way around. It's actually the consciousness was always there, except there is no there. The consciousness was always here, and out of here, gushing into being, into manifestation, is everything we imagine and everything we experience. So one of my facets is I'm a designer builder. So if I come up with an idea for something, I lie awake in the middle of the night and I dream it. And I get up in the morning and I put it on paper. These days you put it into a CAD program in your computer. And the next thing you know, you're looking at a building going up. That's precisely what you just said, Arthur. Everything that humans have wrought on this planet has come from our imagination. The thing we've missed is, for some reason, we haven't been very good at looking into the mirror and seeing sort of who we are at the highest level. And we've seen, there's been a fear-based consensus. So it's really about the consensus reality that we humans have created that have broken us up into all these different religions and sects and countries and all of these nonsensical imaginary things that cost literally trillions of dollars every year to sustain and hold in place. That if we took 1 year's budget from that and put it to solving, say, climate change, just take an example, we could wipe that out in 12 months, no question about it. I'm a chemical engineer, I know how to do that, stuff like that. So we humans have divided ourselves up and kidded ourselves or seduced ourselves into believing that that is reality. And it's entirely imaginary. Somebody made it up. If you look back through history, you'll find there's about 10 or 12 men, don't think there's a woman in there, whose ideas to this day are the controlling, most powerful consensus reality generators. These guys over from way back, that first guy who said the neighbors are dangerous, we've got to get weapons, on and on and on. And all of that is absurd, nonsensical, imaginary, and tragic. Because what it results in for our species is A, we go through a lot of suffering, and B, we fail to manifest the beauty of what we came here to be and do in the first place. Why would I think someone with a different skin color from me is inferior to me or is dangerous? I grew up in South Africa during the apartheid era, and I emerged from South Africa with a real appreciation of our differences. Wow, you look different, you sound different. I love your music. Who makes your clothes? It's like, what? I think if we could flip that prejudice thing to an appreciation thing, where the fact that you are from a different culture, a different ethnic group than I am, and that is a really positive thing, that alone could shift so much. So in our minds, in our imagination, in our consciousness, we have these fear-based assumptions. So the book is very much about assumptions and the power of assumptions.
This is very, very encouraging. So, you know, FDR said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Well, maybe that actually is what it's all about. That it's the actual fear of these things that helps lead into and creates it. Now, that doesn't mean they're not real and that we don't have to be aware of them and we have to be avoiding them. You know, when you go into you're inventing that building, you've got to build it in such a way it's not going to fall on people, and you're going to have to realize the damn dangers. And but somehow the focus of attention onto the solutions rather than the very real danger. Be aware of those dangers, because you know you don't want to walk out and get run over by a car. You want to be aware they're coming. But if you're always focusing on, oh my God, I'm going to get hit by a car, I'm going to run over by a car, are we actually making it more likely that we will?
Absolutely.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, we create our reality.
We have extraordinary power with our minds. We actually create what unfolds in our lives in a very real sense. So that's a big part of the answer to this question.
Yeah, and I just want to say that those men that created this reality, there have been a lot of men who created higher realities as well. So I go to bat for the men in this world. I don't demonize anyone. But what I want to say is, from the eagle's perspective and from the indigenous perspective, who see things as from a creator perspective, and I learned this from the indigenous people, that everything has a purpose. Absolutely everything has a purpose. So what I understand is that we were responding to this lower frequency, that the earth was sitting in this lower frequency energy, this fear energy, and that we came on this planet to transmute that energy for all of creation. Like we are an experiment. Okay, we'll put these humans here in this fear energy, and we'll make them all different. This is the divine speaking, right? We'll make them all different colors and all different religions. And then they'll play out and transmute that energy so that all of creation is done for all of creation. So we've done that. And we've come to the place where, hey, guess what? We don't want to be there. We don't want to do that. We are carrying something very special in our hearts. And that's also in the native stories, is that Spirit said, okay, where am I going to hide this love? Where am I going to hide it? I'm going to hide it deep in the human heart. And I'm going to encase that heart with all this armor from all these experiences in this lower frequency. And now we're ready to find that heart and find that love and walk in alignment with it. And that's what the HeartMath Institute is doing, and Institute of Noetic Sciences. They're actually putting the science behind the power of the human heart, that it creates an electrical magnetic energy field that, and when we're in coherence with that, with our minds and our emotions, that we put out into the Earth's magnetic field this very powerful energy. And so that's the work they're doing. And this is global. They've got 43,000 people right now that go on together in a global heart coherence pulse to educate people about this and to bring them into coherence for this pulse, for this period of time, so that we can understand and we can come together, because it's been said that small islands of coherence in a complex, chaotic field can transmute the whole shooting match when it's out of balance in small islands. So that's what the HeartMath and the Institute of Noetic Science is doing with Zoom and with the technology that's connecting all of humanity. It's time of miracles, because of where we've evolved to through creating all this technology that, who knows, was created for war, wartime. So much incredible technology has come out of that war machine. I mean, so if you just look at the high side and put your attention on the light and look at it from that perspective, it transforms your world completely. And that's my world. For me, everything serves the coming of peace on earth and heaven on earth. Absolutely everything. So that's my reality, and that's what I share, and we share through the book, and tools for people to get to that place.
That is very beautiful. And when you think about it, like even this pandemic, for example, it's forcing all of us to learn how to get on Zoom. As we're getting on Zoom, we're learning we can talk to people on the other side of the planet. We can begin to, as Andrew said, love that person who's wearing that different clothes and has that different music, and we begin to connect. So we're actually beginning to create a neural network of the planet, almost a living brain of the planet that's evolving out of the very dangers that happen out of each one of those. The internet and all these amazing inventions have sort of come out of some of the science that's been heading like missiles that were going to blow up the world, launch the satellites that made the internet possible, et cetera. So I want to turn to back to Andrew a little bit, because you said something very interesting. You talked about these HeartMath experiments. Andrew, what are the actual experiments that show where humans are actually connected to the machines and so on, where you can actually prove this this heart coherence, this reality in science?
All right, let's go back I think it's about 7 years now. The Institute of Noetic Sciences initiated a series of experiments. And one of them was that one July, about 6 or 7 years ago, 4,000 meditators were asked to focus on the city of Washington, D.C., and then certain things within that city were monitored for the month of July, which is an extremely hot time, traditionally a time of violence, shootings, all kinds of stuff going on, lots of frustrations there hitting the streets. What happened was there was a drastic drop in crime, in violent crime in Washington, D.C. for the month of July, apparently triggered by 4,000 people meditating and sending peace vibes to the city. So fast forward to 2020, what is happening now? As Connie just said, how many people? 40,000?
43,000 just on their app.
Right. So what that has now evolved into an app, which you can have on your phone. and it can actually check out your vibratory level. When we talk about the trust frequency, the vibratory of trust or of love, they've got 43,000 people who now have this app and are being asked. Remember, we had 4,000 meditators. Now we have 43,000 of them, and it's not Washington, D.C., it's planet Earth. Now, let's just think about planet Earth. What is planet Earth? Firstly, it's a living biological entity. Mother Earth is alive and reasonably well under the circumstances, and we are bioelectromagnetic beings who consist entirely of electronic energies held together in this form that looks like a body with all these capabilities we have. And if 43,000 of us get together and synchronize our vibratory states, go into a state of coherence, of global coherence, and do that at the same time all together, what happens? That's the question that is being asked and studied right now. And they're calling it a pulse. In other words, when a group of people do that together, something happens. You could say spiritually. You could also say electromagnetically. Something occurs that, from my perspective, I would love it to be an evolutionary, kick in the pants, right? A boost.
Well, that's what their whole purpose is. They have sensors all over the planet. Okay, they've planted sensors all over the planet to test the Earth's magnetic field, to measure it. I mean, the HeartMath Institute is doing all this stuff, boots on the ground. So they have these sensors all over the Earth that can sense the Earth's magnetic frequency. And then they can test, when we do this thing together, what it does to the Earth's frequency.
Or to the Earth's magnetic field, which is measurable.
To the field, and that's the field of consciousness of humanity. So when we do that, we're feeding it to those people who are enmeshed in anxiety, in fear, and all those people that are still and are enmeshed in all this. It vibrates them to a higher level. And from my understanding also is that the Earth herself is moving into a higher frequency. So she's pulsing everybody with a higher frequency. Okay, that's what you're seeing when you're seeing with the stuff that you notice, just mentioned, Arthur. And that's what Gary saw and envisioned, that it's happening. And so, because there are visionaries who see ahead of time. And now the science is able to prove what the Vedic visionaries knew way back when, and the indigenous peoples and all the spiritual people of the world have known forever. Jude Curvin just says, hey, guess what? You guys were right.
Let's bring this down to a simple level of the individual so people can understand what you really mean here. What are the experiments the HeartMath did with taking you're out there, you get connected to these sensors and these machines. What happened? How do we actually prove that this coherence we're talking about isn't just some abstract imaginary, well, we're talking about the power of imagination, but is actually real?
I'm not someone I've visited HeartMath in Boulder Creek, California, and Connie and I have, and we know those folks and we love and respect those folks, but I have not gone into being a subject of those experiments. What I do know is that a lot of experiments have been conducted, for example, with Buddhist meditators. They'll get the Dalai Lama's friends to come over and sit down and get wired up, and then so my point is simply that we've learned a whole lot in the last 20, 25 years about the nature of the science of human consciousness, the science of what is known as mindfulness. And once we're in a mindful state, things change very much for the individual. So speaking personally, I started trying to meditate at the age of 14, because one of my school buddies in South Africa brought these Buddhist books, these Zen Buddhist books to school, and I started trying to do it. I had no idea. I thought it meant like sitting in the full lotus pose and, you know, turning your eyes upward, because that's what it looked like from the pictures. And it took me a very, very, very long time. I got to this country. I got to San Diego, California. You probably know that town, at Christmas of 1969. And one of the first people I met was the famous psychedelic researcher, Ralph Metzner, who worked with Tim Leary and Richard Albert, known as Ramdas. And Ralph Metzner initiated me into my first spiritual practice. That was 1970. And I learned a lot through simply doing these practices. But that's an individual doing a practice and feeling a change or a growth or something, but there's no way to validate it scientifically. I can report to you, oh, this did this for me, you know, I'm healthier or whatever it may be, or more peaceful. But what HeartMath and a very few other institutes, such as the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, where we ran into you and Gary Davis in San Francisco at one of their conferences, remember that?
Yeah.
These two groups in particular, one in Sonoma County and one in Santa Cruz County, wow, they are bringing in extraordinary data. And the question you asked, I believe, is how do we know that data, or how do we understand the relevance of that data? How can that data be applied? And so the experiments I was just mentioning are applications of that sort of lab level data that those folks have been doing. And then coming up theorizing, saying, now what if we got 40,000 people to have this app and to go into a state of personal individual heart coherence all together at the same time, consciously knowing everybody was doing that? What would that do? And how would we know what it did? Well, as Connie just said, they have now placed these magnetometers. That is an instrument that measures the Earth's magnetic field, or measures any magnetic field. So now we have sensors to measure the Earth's magnetic field in how many countries? I saw the map of it. It's in 20 or 30 different countries. There are several hundred of them distributed across the globe. So now as these things, and these are coming up, they have not yet, this particular one, I don't believe has been done yet. It's just in the preparation stage for a mass experiment on the Earth's magnetic field, because we are electromagnetic beings. I have a magnetic field the shape of a toroid, and so does Connie. So our toroids are interwoven as we sit here. Whew.
So, and it's not only the Earth's magnetic field, but it's every human on the Earth.
And every sentient being.
Yeah, and so the power of us as individuals coming together in a coherent state is being utilized to shift us into our hearts, into that compassion and love and everything that you mentioned, Arthur. And there's also other scientists that are coming forth. Nassim Haramein with resonance science, he's offering his course for free.
Unified physics, right?
Okay, unified physics, but resonanceScience.org in his course on unified physics is free. So he has how many thousand in that course?
They've got about 40,000 people signed up for that course. Which is extraordinary, because it's profound, cutting-edge stuff that is controversial. Mainstream scientists are like, oh, that's woo-woo. It ain't, mate. It's real.
Yeah, so this is very important. And Marshall Lefferts, who works with Nassim, has a whole thesis on cosmometry, how music and harmony, that we are all in potential harmony with each other, and that we're all one, all this stuff. I mean, it's amazing. And where we come in with our book is just tools for people to understand this stuff in a practical manner so they can apply it to their lives. Those 7 A's. One can check those 7 A's throughout the day. Okay, where's my attention? What am I putting my attention on? What's my attitude? What are my assumptions? What is my awareness? What level, where am I putting my awareness? What am I allowing into my awareness? What action am I taking? And am I allowing the loving universe to manifest beyond anything I can fathom, beyond my wildest dreams? Because in the higher frequency, which is where the earth is now, and there's a higher frequency have different laws. So the whole laws of scarcity and separation and stuff doesn't exist in this higher frequency. Some people call it the fifth dimension, okay, that we're moving from third dimension density to fourth dimension and fifth dimension. And I'll tell you, I was just reading something last night that was describing the fifth dimension. It's everything I saw through the indigenous people, through the Native Americans, that Andrew saw through the Aborigines, that's possible, that is. It's not only possible, it's probable, it's our capability, it's what is and what can be. We just have to align with it. That's our exercise, is to align with our hearts and take action from our hearts, because we can trust and know it's a conscious, loving universe that's going to support us. It has to. It loves us.
I love that. I love those 7 steps. I'll have to put them on my watch or something here and remind myself during the day, you know, okay, check in. Are you on these? I think that's pretty cool. And, you know, you mentioned assumptions and of course action, which I think which takes us right back to Gary Davis, who you met after. I guess how did you first meet Gary? Was it because of what I gave you when we were at the IDA?
Yeah, I read it, and we were doing this film, The Next Step of In Search of the Future, What Do the Wise Ones Know? Which is an incredible film, by the way, and carrying really important information. So I suggest your folks watch it. But Gary,
we learned, we were in Maine. Connie's from Maine, she's a maniac. And we were in Maine and Massachusetts, and we learned that Gary was in Vermont. And so we called him, and we went there, and we entered another dimension. You remember what happened when you stepped across Gary's doorstep? Did you not enter another dimension? Can you describe what that reality, once you're sitting in Gary's living room?
Oh, well, it is amazing, because it's what you said about a new assumption, and changing. Now, it's very, in the old assumption, you know, where the world's divided, and of course there are nation states, and of course I'm an American, and you're a Jew, or you're this, or Arab, or whatever you are, and you know, in Gary's shift, when you make that little, like, just shift in consciousness and assumption, and you suddenly realize that we're world citizens, suddenly these seemingly impossible problems that there was just no way out of become incredibly manageable. When you walked into Gary's house, you were living the reality of one world. Tell us a little more. What are some of the key takeaways that we want people watching this to take from this? And what are the things that they can help them move forward?
What's a paradigm? A paradigm is an agreed upon a set of assumptions, of fundamental assumptions that create a consensus reality. That's my personal definition of a paradigm. You'll find that in the book. So we talk about a new paradigm or a shift in paradigm. What's an assumption? An assumption is a belief that we take to be true without question. Most of our most fundamental assumptions are unexamined. So here's, down at root level, the change that needs to happen, I believe. We are behaving the way we're behaving because of a whole set of nowadays erroneous, outdated assumptions that may have had relevance at some point in the past, but is not only no longer serving us, it's actually actively dangerous. But we don't know that because it's in our subconscious. So the deepest question here, the biggest question, is how on earth do we get into, I know how to get into my fundamental belief system, my worldview, and it's not easy. I learned a bunch of stuff by the age of 5 or 6 years old that still affects me today. How do we do that? This is a big question I don't have an answer to, because we can write books, we can make films, we can go on TV and the internet and Zoom and all of the above. But how do we reach a tipping point's worth of humans to get us collectively to change our assumptions, some core fundamental beliefs, such as the mechanistic one we learned, that the the universe is a big machine. It's not a big machine, it's a living biologic entity with which we are totally, permanently, intimately connected to and with. For example, that consists, now we say a lot about the word love with a capital L, and love to us is a quantum science thing. It's actually that fundamental energy and force that creates and sustains the entire universe. That's not holding hands, it's a different kind of love. But I'm going to ask Connie to take it from here in terms of how are we going to, in a practical way, reach a sufficient mass of human beings to truly bring about this shift that has been predicted.
That you expressed it, Gary expressed it through his guru, that inspiration, okay, listening to your heart, to your spirit, and acting like Gary did. He acted, he put his life on the line. That's what it takes, to trust enough and to listen and trust enough to put your life on the line. That transforms everything, because that's total trust. And look what Gary's done with that. So that's all I would say.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to turn it over to Melanie Bennett, the associate, the co-producer of this program and of the Gary Davis movie. And I understand that Melanie has some experiences with you as well.
Yes, I do. Look at this book. Look at this book. I mean, incredible podcast. This is amazing. I knew I would be lifted up positively by listening to you. I was so glad you were coming on. Yeah, what happened to me? I'm just this typical person going through my life. And of course, there are times when you're just like, this is too much. I can't believe all the horrible things that are happening in the world. I was just really kind of spiraling down. And so just so happened to have the book that Connie and Andrew gave to me. Didn't, never found the time to sit down and read it, but it was a lifesaver at that moment, because looking at things it's almost, you can say it's an attitude adjustment. For certain people, it's really hard to grasp all this. It's just, what are they talking about? I've never heard of such a thing, or whatever. A good place to start is this book, because it's very practical. It goes step by step. It's relearning these assumptions that we have, and just take a moment to think, what would my life be if I thought this way? It's to me, it's an attitude adjustment. And I just want to say the one assumption the 10th assumption. So you have these assumptions that are going on now, and then Connie and Andrew have written in the book their assumptions. So the current assumption we have in the world is, we're going to hell in a handbasket. Look around you. We have learned nothing over the past centuries. The world would be better off without us. Now, how negative, that's kind of how people are kind of thinking sometimes. And so their 9th assumption is, humanity is on an evolutionary upward spiral. So how does that feel compared to the other one? And the universe is unconditional love. I mean, how does that feel, rather than it's nothing or it's mechanical or whatever? It changes you. It's almost like a positive, positive attitude gets you to do things, actions. When you're in the negative space, when you're, gosh, this is horrible, I'll never get this done, or I can't do this, or they can't do this, or this is not going to work, or it's all going to be destroyed anyway. How does that make you function? It doesn't. You don't function well. You don't function well in stress and hatred and fear. And fear, you're just like, you're not doing your best. You're not in your best environment. So if anything, people, I hope people can take away that this will put you in a better environment, at least a better attitude, a better way of living your life, thinking of others. That's important, how we think of others, how we think of ourselves. If we hate ourselves and we're say negative things to ourselves, that's not helpful. If we say negative things about the world, that's not helpful. So if anything, just give it a try. I mean, like Arthur said, you can get it free, but I recommend supporting Andrew and Connie, because they are worth it. They are doing some important work. And it's really simple. You just go to thetrustfrequency.net, and you'll see them there. They've got lots of work that they've been working on. And this is what I would like to really share with you, something you could practically use and put it in your life. And why not? Try it. Do you like living in negative stuff? You know, just give it a try. Anyway, so sorry, Arthur, I'm taking up all the time. Go ahead. And back to Arthur.
That was beautiful, Melanie. That was great. And so I just want to thank all of you here and on YouTube for tuning in with us. And I hope you'll tune with us every week. We have some amazing speakers coming up. We have among them, if you go to theworldismycountry.com/club, you'll see the speakers we have coming up. People like Sushiant, who won the Global Challenge Foundation Award for Best New Ideas on Better Ways to Govern Our World, a bottom-up democracy, and how we can actually create that. And this was a multi-million-dollar prize, and other wonderful, fabulous speakers. So join us each week for the People-Powered Planet. Thank you for joining us today. And if you haven't yet seen the Gary Davis movie, do go to theworldismycountry.com and just click to watch the film. And join us next week, and together we will shift our frequency. And we want to thank our guests so much for giving us this inspiring way to shift that frequency that can actually shift our actions that will actually end up creating the people-powered planet. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.